Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Tarot. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at how I've been working with recent decks that joined my collection, in specific about some pairings between tarot and oracle decks. Let's do this. So one deck that I just received a couple of weeks ago as a reward from a Kickstarter campaign that I backed again this year. This year I feel like I've been backing more Kickstarter campaigns than actual purchases of decks from mass market or indie. And it's fine because I have to say, except for one campaign where we had a lot of issues and it wasn't a very pleasant interactions with the creator, everything else that I backed have actually been very smooth and everything has arrived on time. Also considering that sometimes there are shipping delays that are completely not the responsibility of the creator. But it has been really interesting because all of the decks that are backed in the first part of the year have arrived more or less at the same time within, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks, in the last 4 to 6 weeks. This one is the Voynich Tarot. And it's a really interesting deck. I backed both the tarot deck and the oracle deck. We'll see that later. So just to explain as a really short description, and I'm going to read from Wikipedia because I don't want to make any mistakes. So basically it says, the Voynich manuscript is an illustrated codex handwritten in an unknown script referred to as Voynichese. The vellum on which it was written has been carbon dated to the early 15th century, between 1404 and 1438. Stylistic analysis has indicated the manuscript may have been composed in Italy during the Italian Renaissance. While the origins, authorship and purpose of the manuscript are still debated, hypotheses range from a script from a natural language or constructed language, an unread code, cipher or other form of cryptography, or perhaps even a hoax, reference work, glossolalia or work of fiction. It's currently lacking the translation and context needed to both properly entertain or eliminate any of these possibilities. What I wanted to say that really caught my attention is the artwork. So it was a Griffin publishing project, as I said, on Kickstarter. Let me just zoom in so we can have a proper look at the cards, and you'll notice that I'm surrounded by flowers. So I've got some gardenias, I've got some lavender here, which I really like because it is, after all, spring in Australia, and we're at the end of a month. On the 1st of December, we're actually moving into summer, and so it feels like I really want to surround myself with flowers. And also I'm putting them on my filming layout. So let's have a look. It comes with this really nice wraparound box with a magnetic closure. It's got this really beautiful image on the inside of the box, and all of these ones are based, so the cards are either based on the images and the decorations on the Voynich manuscript, or they are taken directly from it. So this one is actually one of the most common ones you will see if you Google Voynich manuscript. And it does come with a guidebook. However, the guidebook is in PDF file, which is totally fine. I have actually just downloaded it this morning. These are the backs. I have to say I'm really happy about this deck because it was absolutely no frills. So the campaign was very straightforward. It was very affordable. I don't exactly remember how much I paid for both the Tarot and the Oracle deck, but it must have been something like $50–60 Australian. And then the shipping was very reasonable as well. It came from the US, if I'm correct. It is one of your typical make plain cards, kind of cardstock. Which I'm totally fine with because it is sturdy. It is this kind of semi-gloss. I don't know if you can tell if I move the card this way. And it fans out really well, as you can see. And it's just very easy to overhand shuffle. It is that kind of cardstock that is very flexible, and so you can also riffle and bridge shuffle if you so prefer. And these are the images, and of course, yes, all of these images have been inspired, let's say, by the Voynich manuscript. And as I said, some of them are taken directly from it, if I'm correct, because I remember seeing some of these, so I had a look at the Voynich manuscript, just really a very quick look, I have to say. I didn't study it or anything. It's also because obviously when it says that it has not been translated, there is no way to, when it comes to a codex or something that needs to be deciphered, obviously you need a matrix. And the problem is that we don't have a matrix, for what I understand, in order to be able to translate the manuscript. Which is fascinating. It's a fascinating concept for me. Obviously, being always so interested in languages, this comes out as something very interesting and captivating. So some of these ones have been reproduced, some of these ones have been inspired, and there's no property rights regarding a Voynich manuscript, so I'm guessing there were no problems in copyright infringements when it comes to the images, because no one actually owns the property rights to that manuscript. It is, generally speaking, very quirky, as you can see, very quirky, odd images, clearly botanical based, even though obviously it is a weird kind of botanicals. But it's actually a really nice deck, and obviously it's one of those decks that if you don't like the images, it will not mean anything to you. But when it comes to me, I actually really like these kind of quirks, to be found. Yes, it's a botanical deck, but the plants are really weird, and so it is actually kind of nice. When it comes to this deck, you had the choice to back just the tarot deck or just the oracle deck or both. And I thought to myself, since I always work with tarot and oracle decks together, I may actually have a look at the oracle deck. And the oracle deck is this one. And when I saw it, I liked it immediately, and even more so than the tarot deck. And so I thought to myself, because it was very convenient, it was very affordable, I am definitely going to back the two of them and see how they work together. This one has got the same kind of layout, so it's the same kind of product value. You got a wraparound magnetic closure. This is another image that you can find in a manuscript. I believe that when it comes to the backs, you obviously have different backs. So this one, they still have a very similar kind of vibe, because you can see the similarities between the background. But this one is darker, and it's got some arabesques in the background as well, whereas this one doesn't. But you don't necessarily confuse the two when you flip them over like that on the backs. And I have to say, one thing that I always make sure when I back an oracle deck, or at least 99% of the time when I decide whether I want to purchase a deck, an oracle deck or not, is the presence of keywords. And this one definitely comes with keywords, as you can see here, not just keywords, but actually so you got one main keyword, and at the bottom you also have additional ones, which is always very helpful. And so it says this one is called healing, for example, but it also says recovery, emotional well-being, moving forward. And for example, this one is heart, with love, compassion, following your intuition, esoteric equation with a hidden formula to life's mysteries, choice with having options and making empowered decisions, completion with finishing a cycle, achieving a goal, closure, etc. The keywords actually resonate a lot. These are very intuitive ones, but they're also they have to be intuitive ones, because we're looking at images that don't immediately suggest these kind of keywords, and it would be very interesting to understand the reason that prompted the author to choose these specific keywords when looking at these images. Or perhaps the keywords came first, and then the author created the images, or chose the images. In any case, I believe that the combination between images and keywords is actually really good. So this is the Zodiac Cipher, a message hidden within the constellation. As you can see, the backgrounds have different colors. I don't know if you can tell. Probably with this one, you definitely be able to tell. Some of them are chalk white, some of them are eggshell, some of them are grayish, some of them are pinkish, and this one is definitely on the yellowish kind of color. I'm absolutely fine with that. In the economy of the deck, these look very cohesive in any case, even though they don't share the same color for the background. It really doesn't bother me. And as I said, it does present the same kind of fascination that I felt when looking at the images for the tarot deck. Working with these two together is a bit of a given, in the sense that obviously they have been created in order to be used together with the same kind of images and vibes as well. But I do have another deck that I actually like to pair up with the Voynich Tarot, and I'm going to show you later. So this is basically what I've done this month of November, what I'm currently doing in this month of November. I'm having a look and studying, even though I don't necessarily have a lot of time to go deep into the study of this deck. But I do make it a point whenever I do pull a card, for example, to go to the guidebook and have a look at what the description of the card is and what the meaning assigned by the author is to those particular images on the cards. And it makes it for a very interesting experience, especially when you do read the oracle deck that you pull, so the card in the middle like this, and you focus on the message and then you expand on it by referring to the tarot cards on the sides. So we got balance with the Gardener of Herbs and the Five of Seeds. As you can see, for example, in this case, it's clear that there is a renaming in the just in the court card, but also in the minors when it comes to the Voynich Tarot. But it's very easy to recognize it because you can look at the symbols here, and this one is clearly, I don't know if you can see, let me just do this so you can see more clearly. This is a pentacle, so seeds is referring to pentacles, and herbs, you got a wand here, so it refers to wands. So it's not difficult once you notice these kind of things. This one, for example, is referring to the suit of swords, and it's renamed as thorn. They also make sense, I have to say, for the specific way in which we can always interpret the cards. This one is the cups, and the suit is the fungi. So as I was saying, it's a very straight, once you understand this renaming, is actually rather straightforward to read. But I really like also to just look at the cards and look at the images and probably focus more on the message as related by the oracle deck in the middle, rather to build the story around this lineup, for example. So we've got the cryptic canvas with a hidden message revealed through art. So there is something that the cards are telling me, it's a hidden message, and it's revealed through art, the expression of creativity that takes its shape and form in artistic products. And it's between the Death card and the Two of Wands. So in this case, we can always relate to the fact that the Death card that represents the ending of a cycle, but also the beginning of something new, for the meaning of the Phoenix, for example, will point to something that I don't know yet. It is a hidden message, but it also comes to invite me in this adventure, in expressing this message and finding it in the expression of an artistic endeavor. With the Two of Herbs, which is obviously looking into planning something new, when you look at your world and you see that it fits in the palm of your hands, and all of a sudden everything you've conquered so far feels very small to you. So there is this invitation to acknowledge there is this ending of a cycle and the beginning of a new one, and perhaps that new cycle will signify that in a hidden message. And for example, we've got the creativity card between, so inspiration, innovation, expressing yourself, between the Three of Swords or Thorn, as renamed in this case, and the Nine of Seeds or Pentacles. So it is a really beautiful way to work with the deck. I don't always do it this way whenever I use pairings between tarot and oracle decks. However, I do find that this is probably one of the best ways to display the tarot together, the tarot and the oracle decks together whenever I'm filming a video, because you can clearly see the images. You also see the way in which the vibes, when they interact and how they do so, and what the feelings of the energies coming up both the decks are to you, what they mean to you. Do they resonate? Do they ring any bells in how to interpret the cards? Do they help you go deeper into the understanding of the message of the tarot decks, or do they help you go deeper in the messages of the oracle decks? I'll be very interested to know how you yourself bond with the deck. Please let me know in the comments below, because it's always interesting for me. I have been reading and collecting for over 3 decades now, and I'm always interested to relate my own experience to everyone else in the community, because obviously I can learn something more by sharing and hearing what you think. So did you back this deck? I know that some of you backed it, and I know I've seen it on social media, but not very much. It's probably also because it was just sent out to the backers in the last 4 or 5 weeks. So perhaps, you know, some of you may have backed it but not received it yet, although I doubt it, because as usual in Australia we receive the decks at the end of the queue, which is absolutely fine. I understand that geographically speaking we are in the middle of nowhere, but it is very interesting for me to know what you think about this deck. Now let me just show you the other deck that I actually like to pair up with the Voynich Tarot, which is another deck that I backed as a Kickstarter campaign from a few months ago, and it is an amazing deck. It's probably one of the most powerful oracle decks that I've ever seen. And let me tell you, we're doing a lot of work with my members, and I have chosen this deck for my readings, my weekly readings of the energies of the week, which I do for each and every alchemical sign of the zodiac. So for the fire sign, the water sign, earth sign, etc. And this is the Anatomy of Healing by Fran Kiesler. No, I know that this deck, as I said, is also a reward from a Kickstarter campaign from a few months ago. And I know that it is still for sale. So if you didn't back the Kickstarter campaign, you can actually grab a copy from the creators. It's either a website or an Etsy shop. I'm not entirely sure, I didn't check it myself, but I've been told that the shipping costs for the States are actually really, really high. What I'm hoping is that you might be able to find it perhaps in a couple of months by some resellers in the States, and that will obviously cut the shipping cost to probably a quarter of that. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it is an amazing deck. Trust me, it is really an amazing deck. It comes with this guidebook, which is really fantastic. Let me just quickly show you. Not only you have obviously the all of the cards with the full page drawing, but also a really good description of, let's say, what the tongue, in this case is the tongue card. So what is the tongue related to our body? What does it express? What does it relate to in the economy of our organism? And what I really, really appreciate is that at the bottom of the description here, as you can see, there are a lot of prompts for journaling or meditation. And when we do these energies of the week readings for my members, we actually do a lot of, we read out of the guidebook, which are generally don't do because well, it depends on how well I know a deck, and I'm getting to know this deck more and more, obviously, whilst I use it. But I really like to do this kind of reading out loud of the prompts, because then if you watch that video, you'll be able to think about those prompts during the week, even if you don't have this deck. So let me just show you the way in which these two interact together. We're not looking at the exact same art style, which is obvious because we're looking at two different creators, of course. But I believe that minimalist style that you can find in both decks actually works really well together. And because we're looking at botanicals, let's say, components in the Voynich tarot, but there's also botanicals in the Anatomy of Healing Oracle, even though these botanicals have been created together with parts of the body, of our bodies. So there is this kind of, there are similarities between the two decks, and sometimes I'm really pleased when I see that the symbols or the images look very much alike. Obviously this one is a black and white, or it's rather similar to those antique anatomy kind of drawings that you see from the beginning of the last century. But I'm very pleased when, you know, the images resonate so much, and when they literally create this kind of conversation between them. And I always say this, then when two decks that you're using together, a tarot and oracle deck, feel like they really can recognize each other, and it's almost as if two friends that have not seen each other in a long time, and then they come and have a catch up and a meeting, and they're just sharing a conversation in front of a coffee. This is literally the feelings that you have as a card reader, card slinger, as a storyteller as well, when you use these two together. And it's always a plus for me, because it means that the choice is very good. And when it comes to the Anatomy of Healing, you will notice that there's always at the top, let me just do this. So at the top of the card, there is the indication of what you're actually looking at. So this is the small intestine. And at the bottom, there's always a bit of either a keyword or a sentence or a message that helps you understand the key through which you should read the anatomical part you're looking at as an image on the card. So for example, for the small intestine, we've got fuel me up. And obviously this is related immediately when we think about it, is the nourishment, what we eat. Is it healthy? Are we filling ourselves with something that is going to give us nourishment, or are we filling ourselves with something which is actually toxic? So it really gives you that prompt, the way in which you're considering and looking at your life and trying to understand whether you're doing the right thing or not. Fuel me up also points to energy. Sometimes we are depleting ourselves because of work, because of stress, because of issues, because of whatever happens in our lives, and we're not necessarily replenishing the energies that we spend. And so this card is inviting you to do just that, because when your energy is at zero levels, you obviously cannot do anything anymore, or whatever you attempt to do will not come out really well. So this is an advice. But when you do go to the guidebook, for example, let me just show you, you will see that it gives you these really interesting prompts. So this is number 18, and these are in order. So I'm just going to go to number 18. This is 14, so it's obviously a few pages ahead. And this is number 18, so small intestine. So just to give an idea, this says the small intestine, also called bowels, is part of our digestion. This winding muscular tube sits beneath the stomach and is longer than you are tall. Apart from the fact that I find it fascinating, because these kind of notions are actually really important in order to understand ourselves. I mean, I knew this because, and I feel like a lot of us know that, because they do tend to say that our intestine is really, really long, you know, if you just put it in a line. But there's a lot of notions like this referring to all of the organs throughout the book. About 3 times your body length. It's only called small due to its 1-inch diameter. Primary functions include breaking down food into liquid, absorbing nutrients, and supplying them to the bloodstream. The small intestine helps us digest and absorb not only food but also our experiences. And this is where it starts connecting the divinatory meaning or the advice of the card to the anatomical meaning of the card and the image itself. Every encounter, challenge, and connection can be seen as a nutrient which contributes to our growth and knowledge, just as the small intestine transforms food into nourishment, we too must transform our experiences into meaningful lessons. Then it goes on a little bit, but I wanted to draw your attention to these. These are literally the prompts that I really rely on whenever I do a one card pull in the morning for myself or in the evening. So to connect, reflect on what nourishes me, what's toxic for me these days, am I rushing things, do I trust my own timing, what is challenging for me, am I staying open to new experiences, what have I learned from past lessons. As you can see, this can keep you busy the whole week. I mean, for me, I don't like to overdo it in one night or one morning, for example. When I have 5 or 6 questions or prompts like these, generally I spread them out throughout the whole week because each and every one of these questions has got a lot of fuel in order for me to do a lot of journaling and meditation. It is so all of these cards, all of them present you with prompts like that, and they are very, very interesting. And when it comes to the aesthetics, I like to think that it actually works out really well, as I was saying earlier, between these two decks. And so this is the way in which I've been working with my decks in the last 2-3 weeks, and I've chosen this because this is a very much a spring deck, and we are in spring in Australia, as I was mentioning, and so it feels like it's a necessary deck for me to dig deeper in because of the vibes of October that I have called Spooktober, because I have deliberately chosen in the month of October to only focus on really dark decks, scary decks at times, trick or treat kind of decks, sometimes even whimsical, which was really, really fun. But that has actually been a mistake, and I recognize it now, because it felt like I was never balanced. I was always leaning towards a darker kind of working with my decks, not just the shadow work, but also the work that I normally do as Samhain. And so this kind of work, which is very bright, very light for me, feels like it was very much needed. So these two together are fantastic, and these are the two decks that I'm working the most with for my pairings in the month of November. But let's have a look at another couple of decks. Another thing that I really like to do when working with my decks is readings for myself. Sometimes it goes from very important things to things that are not as important, even though I really do believe that everything you do and all of the choices that we take during the day are always important, because you never know what they can lead to. But in any case, it goes from important decisions such as what am I going to do next year to expand my knowledge, what do I want to focus on, for example, or also really daily readings such as what should I tell this friend of mine who's been asking for advice, etc. So this is something that has always been present in my practice. When I look at tarot has always been accompanying my whole life, probably not my whole life, but 36 years of my life, and it's always been there for me. And I was by the way, I was watching, and you let me know, guys, if you're watching this as well. I'm watching From, which is a TV show, and it's a TV show that has been created from the same producers as Lost. And if you don't know From, you'll still probably know Lost. It was a TV show from many years ago, but it was really intense. It was very speculative kind of TV show. It was the story of the passengers on the oceanic flight from Sydney to LA. Sorry, I'm laughing at oceanic because the name oceanic, the oceanic flight, has been repeated so many times throughout the 5 seasons of Lost that at a certain point, it sounds whimsical when repeating it. But anyway, there was nothing funny about what happened, because obviously it was a plane crash, but they crashed on an island in the middle of the Pacific, and there were a lot of things. And obviously, if you haven't watched it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but a lot of things happened, and I felt like every time I was watching a new episode, something weird happened, something speculative happened. And the creators were really good, because every episode, or almost every episode, ended on a cliffhanger, which is, what you want to do as a storyteller, because you want to keep the attention really high. You want to keep people watching or reading your book, chapter after chapter. And at a certain point in From, so not Lost, but the same creators produce also From, which is now on, they released, I believe it is the 3rd season. You please let me know in the comments below. I find that because from a start, the first season was really scary. The second season was starting to add speculative elements in that. But the third season, because I feel like they ran out of the jump scares, so it's not as scary anymore, at least the episodes that I've watched, because now we know what the scary factor is related to. Then what they're doing is they're making it really sad. There's a lot of pathos, and it's incredibly sad. And please let me know in the comments below if you're watching the third season, do you have the same experience? Because I was literally feeling really sad when watching the latest episodes. I haven't caught up to all of the ones that have been released, but I watched the first 3 or 4, and they're just really sad because they're not scary anymore. It feels like the creators had to really dig it into how desperate they all are, and even when there were some things going well, then all of a sudden it was a tragedy again. So I don't know, if you are watching it, please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, the reason why I brought this up is because there is a character from that reads tarot, and she says that she's literally reading tarot almost every day, and she explains how tarot, at the beginning she didn't really know the meaning of the cards, but she always felt like she wasn't alone, and she's always relied on tarot. And she was saying, you can ask anything you want, and you know, and these cards, and she has a tarot deck in her hands, and I'm always trying to see which tarot deck that is, but I couldn't recognize it. Maybe it's one that they did only for filming purposes, because of copyright they probably cannot use other decks. And it was really, I felt really seen, because I thought to myself, to a different extent throughout the years, but I always look at tarot as a companion, as someone literally personified, someone who's next to me, and you know, and we have a conversation together. So the what I do, sometimes I choose a different deck for every month, and this month I'm actually using this one. So this is the Cosmic Cycles Tarot. The author is Martina Razzo and the illustrator is Miriam E.G. This is the second edition of the deck. I wish I had splurged for the one with the pink borders. This is not that one. So if you're like me and you like to use tarot on a daily basis, or almost daily, or whenever you feel like you want to hang out with a friend, let's say, this is actually really good for that, because it's at the same time it's a very balanced deck, but it's also one of those decks that refers to daily life, as you can see in many images. This is the story it's a storytelling deck. It's a story of the Page of Wands, and you know, her life, and what happens when she goes to college, and her friends and everything. And obviously I'm much older than this person. I could definitely be their mom. And I have to say that sometimes it bothers me in a deck, but in this one in particular it doesn't, because I feel like the energies of this deck are very spot on many things. And you don't necessarily need to recognize what happens in the scene in order for this deck to resonate with you. There's always a meaning that actually transcends the events that are described or painted on the images. So that's one of the reasons why I really love to hang out with this deck, because it really feels like it can be a daily companion. It's not too powerful. It is let's put it this way, because I don't want to say anything negative about this deck. I really love it, but it's not one of those decks that you would use for shadow work, for example. And honestly, I would never use a shadow work deck on a daily basis. That would be way too strong and depleting my energy. But at the same time, it's neither one of those hug decks that I use whenever generally after I use a shadow work deck and I need a hug deck. It is one of those decks that can literally be used every day. Now, because I always like to pair up my decks, as you know, I have one oracle deck that I really enjoy using with this one. and it's this one here. So this is the Signs of the Times Oracle by Crystal Banner. This is a Hay House release from probably a year ago. I honestly don't remember. It's not very recent, but it's also not one of those really older decks, Oracle decks by Hay House. It does come with a matte cardstock. As you can see, it doesn't catch the light at all, which I really appreciate because it's actually a very similar cardstock to the Cosmic Cycles Tarot. And it's one of those decks that it really is, it goes straight to the point. It does have some kind of a graphic art style, as in graphic novel art style, and it pairs really well with this deck and also with other decks that I've got in my collection, but these are the two that I'm actually focusing on, or I'm using, let's say, every day or almost every day for the month of November. And as I said, these are two decks that are definitely used for very quick readings. Let me just zoom in to show you a bit better the cards. So as you can see, they have very similar color palette as well. The art style, being a graphic novel type of style, actually pairs up quite well as well. And I really like it because the Oracle deck comes with a title, so you've got the evil eye here, but also gives you a keyword to interpret the card, which is always very much appreciated. And that is definitely what starts the conversation. You can really start by looking at the card here. For example, you got reflection. So you got mirror as the title of the card, and it's one of those disco balls. And then you have the keyword, which is reflection. And when you pair it up with the two cards on the sides, the tarot cards on the sides, so you got the reflection card between the Seven of Wands and the Ace of Cups. And you know, reflection in this case is looking at yourself in a mirror, but there, because it's one of those disco balls that has a lot of small mirrors, what this card is telling me is, for example, that there's a lot of different truth to one story. And so in the Seven of Wands, you have your own story and you're sticking to your own guns. And the Seven of Wands in a sequence, when you read sequentially, it tells you that you find yourself in a Seven of Wands situation in which everyone is against you, simply because in the Six of Wands, when you were acclaimed as the winner, the leader, you did not acknowledge the importance of being part of a team. You did not acknowledge that your victory came as a collective effort. And so now you find yourself with everyone else asking you, or you know, being aggressive towards you, being confrontational towards you, because they want to understand you know, what your position is now and what are you going to do now that you find yourself on your own. And obviously the reflection card, on the one hand, it invites you to, yes, stick to your own guns, but at the same time it also makes you think about what has gone wrong. It's an invitation to understand what the dynamics were that brought you into a 7-on-1 situation. And perhaps you need to understand that you are never alone. You're the Ace of Cups. In the Ace of Cups, there's always the new beginning of relationships, the new beginning, not just romantic relationship, but relationship as seeing yourself as part of a circle of friends, of co-workers or family, etc. So you're not by yourself. You probably entered in this 7-on-1 situation because you only saw what you were doing. So as you can see, there's always a lot of prompts given by the Oracle decks, the Oracle cards, to just reflect, meditate or journal about some very specific situation. There is a divine guidance, for example, between the Six of Swords and the Two of Swords. And this is a really important message here. That's a very strong, powerful message, because if you find yourself in a Two of Swords situation in which you're faced by a very important decision in your life, and it's a very tough one at that, and you don't necessarily have all of the information you need. Like, traditionally speaking, we see the character depicted in the Two of Swords as being blindfolded. In this case, the little girl is not blindfolded. As a matter of fact, she's actually opening her eyes, but she is torn. she's torn just as much as the character on the traditional RWS Two of Swords is torn, because she doesn't know, do I want to go with dad, do I want to go with mom? And it's heartbreaking. And there is this kind of crack in the middle of the card, because there is a heartbreaking situation for her, for any one of us who find ourselves in this dear situation. And so obviously here it tells you that there is a star that is pointing to a direction. There is a guidance that comes to you if you just want to open yourself to understanding this message. And it is, yes, it is a Six of Swords. It will be difficult because obviously here it looks like she has made a choice and she wants to go with her mom, but she's still turning back to look at the shadow of her dad behind the door, and it's heartbreaking at the same time, but it is a decision that needs to be made, and there is some guidance that will make you feel like you're not alone in what you're going through. So these two together, let me say, yes, the tarot deck is an indie tarot, and I think it sells for around 50 euros, and then you have to add up shipping cost, of course. But I have to say, 50 euros for an indie deck, to be honest, is not that much, because nowadays we're paying 50 euros for a mass market deck. So I feel like it's actually a really good price. And then this one is a Hay House, so it's a mass market deck, and I recall spending 17 Australian dollars for this deck, which is pretty much the cost of a pizza, even less, to be honest, in Sydney. So obviously these two together, it doesn't come to a really expensive total. But I really like using these two, and as I said, I use them pretty much every day, probably not in the combination like this. I just use this type of layout whenever I'm using these two together, or sometimes what I do, I just literally, and I'm going to show you quickly, I literally pull 3 cards. Now there's really random pull, and then I'm just gonna pull a card here, so let me just show you. Okay, so 3 cards like this in a layout, and then I just pull another card from the Oracle and I read these 3 together, but I also read the final card from the Oracle deck as a wrap-up message or a send-off message out of this reading. So again, let me know in the comments below, do you use this deck? How do you use it? Do you like it? I know that it's a quite popular deck, so I've seen a lot of people using it, but I'm always interested to know how people actually use these decks. And another deck that I'm using this month, because I really want to get to know it and appreciate it, it's the Botan Tarot by A. Miyako M. This is the 2nd edition. This deck has been out of print for a few years, and then it was super difficult to find them, very expensive even when used secondhand. But then the creator decided to do a reprint, which was really appreciated by pretty much everyone in the tarot community. So I was able to get a copy of it. I think that there might still be a few copies available by few resellers. I got this copy from Laurie from Love Magic Sparkles in Singapore. I'm not sure whether she still has it in stock. I've seen other people from getting their copy from Samantha at the Boutique London. There might be still some copies there. I didn't actually check. And then I find out that, as always, at the time of filming, there might be 1 or 2 decks available, and then at the time of posting, they're gone. So please do your research. It is a really beautiful deck, so I wouldn't be surprised if it went out of stock again. It does come with a guidebook here. As you can see, it is actually called Simple Guide because it only shows you the thumbprint of the card and then a couple of keywords for the upright or the reverse meaning. But this one, if you go into Miyako's website, you'll be able to download the full the PDF file of the zine. So she wrote a guidebook in the form of a zine, and it's really interesting because it goes much deeper than this into the cards and the images themselves of the cards, and there are some images that are actually really potent, really powerful and poignant. So I highly recommend it. I did not purchase the physical copy of the zine, but I purchased the PDF format, and it was only, I believe, $5 US. I could be wrong, but it was very cheap. It was very affordable. So if you were wondering whether you'll be able to get it, obviously there is no stock limit on that because it's a PDF file, and I highly recommend you check out Miyako's website. This edging is so beautiful. I really like it. It's like a I don't know how to call this color because I'm terrible at identifying colors, but I like this kind of blue. It's almost as if it was a mix between a blue and a gray, which makes it really nice. And I do work a lot now with this deck. What I do, I actually like to go back and forth between the images that I pull and also the guidebook, because as I said, there are a lot of really powerful stories behind these cards, and they really help you understand, let's say, the intention of the creator when describing the card, but also when assigning a specific card to the tarot meaning. So it's the Tower card, and it's inspired by a watchtower. So this watchtower was in an internment camp that was operating in one of the states of the United States for Japanese American for during the Second World War, so between 1942 and 1945. And I was reading about it, and between 1942 and 1945 there have been a total of 10 camps that were opened, holding approximately 120,000 Japanese Americans for various periods of time in California, Arizona, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and Arkansas. So I'm actually reading this out of the Encyclopedia Britannica. And there is something to be said. It's obviously when there's a war, there's always something awful happening. So I don't think there's any point in making any kind of comments as to judging what has happened. The only thing that I think still makes sense is to be compassionate and to feel that kind of, and apply that kind of compassion to everything that we see and we hear. We were not alive. Most of us were not alive during those years, but I remember talking to my grandpa and also my dad. My dad was very young, but he was alive during the Second World War. And I remember talking to them and understanding everything that has happened. So they were based in Italy. So there's obviously Italy has been bombed during the war. And so they were telling me about the, when the alarm was going off, and then having to run to the refuges, but most of the time you didn't have time to, because the alarm went off like 5 minutes before the actual bombing, and that never gave enough time to people to actually run to the closest refuge. So most of the people just stayed in their own homes. And but I also remember that there were concentration camps, at least one concentration camp in Italy, in the Risiera San Saba, which is in the province of Trieste, in the northeastern part of Italy. And I've actually been visiting there. And there's so many things that can be said, and I don't want to become political because I don't think this is the right environment, this is the right place to give out political ideas on something that I did not live in first person. So I obviously do not have direct experience of that. But what I can say is that whenever I see a card like this that has so much history behind in a tarot deck, I always appreciate it. I always appreciate the knowledge it can give me, because I must say that I did hear that there were Japanese American internment camps in the US during the Second World War, but I wasn't necessarily aware of all of the details. And so having found this story gave me the possibility to enrich my knowledge about what happened. So this is obviously very interesting. It's an additional layer of interpretation that I'm always seeking out in a deck, but it's also very heartbreaking. And so I always appreciate the way in which I can, tap into the vibes and the energies of the deck. And that is not the only heartbreaking card in this deck. I highly recommend, if you have this deck, I highly recommend splurge and spend this. It's not even splurging, honestly. $5 is probably the cost of a Starbucks coffee. So instead of your next Starbucks coffee, just go to the Miyako's website and download this PDF, because it actually makes the experience with this deck so much more worthy, because it's so much deeper. Now, when it comes to pairings, because this video is mainly about the pairings that I'm doing with the decks that I'm using this month, I've actually narrowed it down. At the beginning, I tried a few Oracle decks, but I've actually narrowed it down to 2 because I believe that they work really well. And one of them is the Wild Child Oracle. This is probably a second edition, in the sense that this is not the one with the curved tops and bottoms. This one is with the straight one, so it's a very standard tarot size and format. Also comes with the guidebook if you want, but it does show you keywords or titles on the cards, so it makes it easier to access this deck. And I have to say that there's when it comes to the color palette, it's very similar. It's not 100%, but as you can see, it's very similar. When it comes to the art style, it's also very similar. It's never 100%, but then again, I mean, aesthetics is not the make it or break it for a pairing for me. Of course, it covers a very important part of the process of pairings, but at the same time, I'm also very aware of the vibes and the energies of the deck, and sometimes it just so happens that 2 decks that don't have exactly the same aesthetics still pair up really well, because they're very conducive of a certain type of work. When it comes to why I use this deck this month, that is literally because of the PDF file, because I have discovered so much when looking at the images and understanding what the meaning of the images is, you know, by reading the entries on the PDF. But at the same time, the more knowledge I gather about the Botan Tarot, the more I want to actually try and use it for not just divination, I would say, but just self-worth kind of practice. Whenever I feel depleted, that I'm missing energy, but I'm not ready to use a hug deck yet, and I still want to understand a bit more about myself, but not by using one of your typical shadow work decks, then I reach out for this one. And I feel that there's a lot of balance thanks to the Wild Child Oracle, which is the one in the middle. Because this is also, the Botan Tarot for me is a 100% spring deck again, and hence the reason why I'm using it this month. But I feel that it is very balanced when used in combination with the Wild Child Oracle. And there's another Oracle deck that I want to show you now that works even better, I believe, with the Botan Tarot. And it's this one here, so it's the Viator Somniorum by One Eromancy deck, and this is a 2nd or 3rd edition of the deck, I believe. So it was called in a different way, Alkeringa, I believe, previously in a previous edition. This is a reward from a Kickstarter campaign, again, that ended probably 6-8 months ago, and I received this deck 3-4 months ago, but I was away when I received it, so I only started working with it actually this month, and it feels like it's a perfect companion to the Botan Tarot. So let me just show you. So by the way, I don't remember having explained, so Viator Somniorum is Latin for the Traveler of Dreams. So Viator is traveler, Somniorum is of dreams. And it's a very specific kind of deck, in the sense that it really shows you the way. It's almost as if in Traveler, I would reckon that the best way to translate is a navigator. So the navigator of dreams. And it's not a deck that you can use only to interpret dreams, because I feel that sometimes that's a bit reductive when we look at the deck just to for dream interpretation. I feel that it's an excellent oracle deck when we look at pairings, for example, in this case with the Botan Tarot. I don't know if it makes sense, and as a matter of fact, I just double checked, and this is the 6th edition of the deck, so I didn't even know that there had been so many editions, but it makes it like a very important deck, because obviously if there has been demand for 6th edition of this deck, it means that a lot of people either have it or they really asked for the deck to be reprinted. It was out of print for a couple of years, and I was desperate to put my hands on a copy. And then when I heard that they were going to launch another Kickstarter campaign, I just went ahead and waited for that. As you can see, again, when it comes to the aesthetics, this is probably even less of a match than the Wild Child Oracle that I was showing you before. But when it comes to the vibes and also the keywords at the bottom of the Oracle deck, this actually works even better in a combination. It's ironic because this one, obviously it's a head that looks like it's a vase, so it feels like we're looking at 3 cards referring to cups. So we got the source here between the 5 of Cups and the 4 of Cups. It's an amazing reading, because I will have to say that between the sequential reading from the 4 of Cups and the 5 of Cups, so from the anhedonia of the 4 of Cups, the impossibility or the lack of enjoyment of things that are in front of us, and the incapacity to settle on one thing or another, or also the incapacity to feel pleasure deriving from the things we already have, and thinking that, you know, the neighbor's lawn is always greener than our own. That's more or less the 4 of Cups that, as I read it in this case. We can also look at what happens afterwards. So it will happen that when you don't find the enjoyment, you don't put enough value in the things that you have on offer in front of you, it just so happens that sometimes you start losing them or breaking them. And so this is a really beautiful concept if read in a sequence. And the invitation from the Oracle deck is to go back to the source. That is something that I find myself recommending many times when reading tarot. Go back to the source. What was originally that gave you inspiration? What makes you happy? What makes you feel balanced, grounded, nourished? What gives you the energy to be compassionate towards others? What does that make you feel? So if you go back to the source, you will understand that you need to reevaluate what you have around you and start appreciating everything, because nothing is a given. Nothing needs to be taken for granted. Otherwise, you start slowly actually losing things. So as you can see, this Oracle deck, the keywords on it, they're not necessarily just used for dream interpretation. And so far, I have not used it for dream interpretation. First of it, because lately my dreams in the month of October have been almost all of them centered or focused on people who are beyond the veil, so my loved ones that are not with us anymore. I had a lot of visiting from them in the month of October, and so dream interpretation in that case feels really heavy, and so I felt like I needed to take a step back from that and just try and deal with my feelings one at a time. So I haven't used this deck for dream interpretation, but it doesn't need to be used just for that. As you can see, it's a perfectly good Oracle deck with really resonating keywords at the bottom, and obviously it does come with a guidebook, so you can choose to look at the guidebook as well. It is very informative as well. So this is it, and these are the decks that I've been using and working with in the month of November. But let me know what your decks lineup was for the month of November. How are you using them? Is there any deck you recommend? If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, are you embracing the spring vibes, or are you like me that I'm trying to understand where to place myself between my heart telling me that I feel the vibes of the Northern Hemisphere and the weather that is actually getting better and better now in Sydney? I would be always interested to know. Please don't forget to like and subscribe this video if you haven't already. It's very important for me because it does help grow my channel. And when I can grow my channel, that means that I can dedicate more time in producing more content. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.